When I got married, I never told anyone about the 3 apartments my grandma left me. And thank goodness I stayed silent, because just a week later my mother-in-law walked in with a notary. There's a secret I kept for years, a secret that could have shattered my marriage before it even began. And it all started with a knock on the door, just 7 days after I said I do. The air in our newlywed bubble was still thick with the sweet scent of wedding flowers and late-night whispers. It was barely 10 a.m., but for us, still basking in that honeymoon glow, it felt impossibly early. Then, the doorbell screamed, persistent and sharp, yanking me from a domestic reverie. Who on earth is knocking this early? I mumbled to myself, rushing to the hallway, towels still clutched in my hand. Before I could even turn the lock, there she was, Eleanor Vance, my mother-in-law, standing on our doorstep like a general inspecting her troops. Perfectly coiffed hair, a severe pantsuit, and an expression that promised no pleasantries. Beside her, a smaller man fidgeted, clutching a leather briefcase, eyes fixed on the floor. His neat hair and formal jacket screamed lawyer or notary. "Chloe," Eleanor announced, her voice a steel blade cutting through the morning silence. "Hello, dear. We need to talk. This is Daniel Reed, a family friend and notary. I've decided it's time to sort out a few things." My heart plummeted. Sort out what? I thought, a forced smile plastered on my face. Just 1 week after the wedding? A cold knot of dread began to tighten in my stomach. I still hadn't told anyone about it, the inheritance. 3 apartments, scattered across the city, all from my incredible grandmother. It wasn't greed that kept me silent. No, I just despised how people changed, how they started digging once finances entered the picture. More than anything, I desperately wanted Liam to love me, not for the square footage I quietly owned. "Good morning, Eleanor," I managed, my voice a little too bright, ushering them into the apartment Liam and I now called home. "Please, Daniel, come in." I forced myself to be hospitable, even as my nerves frayed. What was happening? Was she here to make me sign something? A promissory note? A prenup? It had only been 7 days since our wedding. Eleanor immediately surveyed the place as if she owned it, a critical glance sweeping across every surface. Then, with a curt wave, she gestured toward the living room, a silent command. "Seat your guests, Chloe." Manners ingrained deep within me. I did just that, then practically fled to the kitchen to prepare tea and cookies. I wasn't thrilled to serve her, but some part of me clung to the illusion of normalcy. "Chloe, where's Liam?" Eleanor asked, settling into the couch. "I asked him to be home." "He just stepped out," I replied, a small lie. He'd merely gone to the store for a moment, but I desperately needed those few minutes to figure out what was going on. As I poured the tea, Eleanor's eyes scanned the room, and she couldn't resist. "Things still aren't quite in order, dear. Young couples never understand how to keep a proper home, but we'll fix that later." I bit back a retort, offering only a tight smile as I set down her cup. Her tone sharpened. "Chloe, Liam's father and I decided that since you're part of the family now, it's time to take care of some paperwork. You're married, after all. We simply want to avoid any future issues regarding property." She gestured to Daniel, who seemed to shrink deeper into the sofa. "Daniel has prepared some documents. We believe it's important to be fair and transparent." My entire body tensed. "Right here, right now? What kind of documents, Eleanor?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light, innocent. "What exactly are we talking about?" "Oh, nothing major," she said, feigning nonchalance. "Just a prenuptial agreement. And a note confirming that any property gained during the marriage will be split evenly, should anything happen. We also just want to clarify, to be sure, that you didn't have any significant assets before the wedding." My heart twisted into a hard, cold knot. There it is. I knew she was fishing, and I was ready. I'd always suspected she couldn't resist prying into my private life. "Assets?" I smiled a little too brightly. "Well, I saved a bit for the wedding. And I have a few small savings. Nothing major, really." "I see," she replied, her eyes narrowing. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head. She either didn't believe me, or she knew I was hiding something. "And what about property? Did you own anything before the marriage?" You people are incredibly nosy, I almost screamed. Instead, I shook my head gently. No, nothing serious. I used to live with my grandmother, but she passed away a while ago, and that apartment was small. It went to my parents. I bit my lip, forcing back the truth. That particular apartment did go to them. But the other three, the beautiful, valuable ones my grandmother had bought and shrewdly managed through her business, those were mine, left to me in her will. Only her notary knew, and I'd specifically asked him to keep it confidential. So, nothing. Eleanor repeated, her eyes wide with a sort of shocked disbelief, as if someone as plain as me couldn't possibly have married her son without some hidden motive. Well, then, all good, Daniel. Show her the agreement. I took the papers Daniel handed me, my gaze skimming the clauses. Divorce, jointly acquired property, nothing overtly threatening. Until one specific clause leapt out at me. If one spouse, meaning me, is later found to have significant assets, those assets will be considered joint property unless specifically stated otherwise as premarital. It was a trap. A deliberate, calculated trap. If my secret ever came out, it would automatically become theirs, unless I declared it now. But if I declared nothing, I was signing away everything I owned. I feigned intense concentration, carefully poring over the document. Eleanor, meanwhile, droned on. Liam's a good boy, but life is unpredictable. And you, dear, you come from a modest background. Why complicate things? We're just handling this now to avoid arguments later. Anger, hot and visceral, boiled in my gut. So, to her, I was just some easily dismissed girl, no name, no status. Fine. But I knew deep down that if I revealed the truth, that I had 3 income-generating apartments, she would never, ever let it go. She'd demand they be signed over to the family, or offered to relatives at a discount. I couldn't let that happen. And most importantly, I couldn't risk my relationship with Liam. He had no idea, and I believed he truly loved me. I need to talk to Liam first, I said, my voice firmer than I thought possible, handing the papers back to Daniel. I'm not signing anything without him. Eleanor's lips thinned, but she quickly regained her composure. Of course, dear, talk to your husband. But I'm sure he agrees with me. This is for your own peace of mind. Right, Daniel? Daniel nodded, looking profoundly uncomfortable, then glanced at his watch. If we're signing today, it needs to be before lunch. I have other meetings. Just then, the door creaked open. Liam stepped into the hallway, grocery bag in hand. His eyes widened, surprised to see his mother and the notary. Mom, what's going on here? He set the bag down, his gaze finding mine. Chloe, what's happening? I just lifted a hand, a small, helpless gesture that conveyed, don't ask me. I'm just as stunned. Eleanor immediately launched into a lengthy explanation for Liam, painting herself as a concerned protector of his future, insisting a prenuptial agreement was simply logical. Liam listened, his face growing tenser with each word. When she finally finished, he spoke, his voice quiet but unmistakably firm. Mom, I asked you not to get involved in our relationship. Chloe is my wife. We'll handle things ourselves. Eleanor frowned. Sweetheart, I'm just trying to help. I understand that, Liam countered, but you didn't tell me you were coming or that you were bringing a notary. That's too much. Eleanor gasped. Liam, how can you not see? These days, you have to be careful. What if Chloe has hidden debts? Or worse, some unknown fortune that suddenly comes to light? It's better to sort it all out now. He glanced at me then, a quick, searching look, trying to gauge if there was any truth to this hidden fortune story. My heart hammered, but I held his gaze, trying to project calm. If Chloe has something, I honestly don't care, Liam finally said, his voice ringing with conviction. I love her, not her money. And Mom, seriously, enough. Eleanor pouted, clearly offended, but the defeat was evident in her eyes. Fine, do what you want, Daniel. Sorry to waste your time. She stood, heading stiffly for the door. Daniel, shoulders slumped, awkwardly followed her out. The relief that washed over me when the door clicked shut was immense, a physical weight lifting. Liam came to me, wrapping me in a tight hug. I'm so sorry she acted like that. It's okay, I whispered, trying to sound diplomatic. I get it. She's just worried. She wants you to have stability and security. But deep down, my decision was made. Solid. Unwavering. I wouldn't tell anyone about the 3 apartments. Not yet. Keeping quiet felt like the only right move. And that's how our married life truly began, with an undeniable warning shot from my mother-in-law. It was just the opening salvo in what would become a long, messy family saga. Eleanor wasn't about to back down. She was determined to control everything, our family, our finances, even the very air we breathed in our home. Her attitude swung wildly day by day. One moment, she'd be saccharine sweet, bringing flowers, inviting us to dinner. The next, she'd lash out, a barrage of criticism for every tiny thing I did. To really understand the story, and believe me, there's so much more to it, you need to know that every chapter of our family life unfolded like a scene from some never-ending soap opera. And like any good soap opera, it was all about secrets, drama, and messy emotions. My biggest secret? Those apartments, a legacy from my grandmother. But let's rewind a bit. My life before Liam was pretty ordinary. I grew up in a family of engineers. My dad, an electrician, my mom, a design engineer. They both worked at the same factory. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. I finished school, went to university to study economics, and worked part-time at a small clothing store. I never wanted to burden my parents. My family was generally easygoing, but my grandmother was especially so. She instilled in me a fierce sense of independence and confidence, always telling me I could achieve anything. She was truly a remarkable woman. Back when times were hard, she and my grandfather weren't afraid to hustle, whether it was sewing clothes or trading rare items under the table. It was risky, but it brought in money. When the economy improved, she launched a small business, shrewdly buying apartments, renting some out, flipping others. She had an uncanny sixth sense for real estate, a touch of pure luck. Near the end of her life, she quietly drafted her will, keeping it a secret from everyone. My parents, who never quite approved of her gray area business tactics, had a strained relationship with her. But she loved and trusted me. A week before she passed, knowing her time was short, she asked me to meet her notary. There, I signed the documents, making me the sole heir to those 3 apartments. The will stipulated I'd take ownership only after her death. Once she was gone, I followed all the legal steps, officially inheriting the properties. But I told no one. My parents assumed the apartments had been sold or left to someone else. I believe my grandmother wanted to avoid drama to prevent any infighting. And honestly, she was right. She left them to me because she trusted I would manage them wisely, without letting them become a source of family tension. But the real test of that secret began the moment I got married. My grandmother, ever so sharp, had warned me, nothing threatens an inheritance more than greedy in-laws. I used to laugh. Greedy? No, surely people aren't like that. They'll understand. It's mine. But now, looking at Eleanor, I was starting to realize my grandmother was absolutely, terrifyingly right. I met Liam in my second year of university. He was a physics grad student, brilliant, passionate, and, despite being a theoretical physicist, incredibly charming and athletic. We quickly grew close, then started dating. He was gentle, caring, always joking that I was his muse. I admired how deeply he respected his mother. His father was in the military, often deployed, so Eleanor had raised Liam mostly on her own, guiding him through school and university. To him, she was a saint. So, I understood Eleanor was a central, powerful figure in his life. What I fatally underestimated was just how much she would try to control it. Liam and I dated for a long time before we finally decided to marry. Even during the wedding planning, Eleanor was intensely involved, insisting on my hairstyle, the flower arrangements, the cake design. I pushed back, gently, but I held firm to my vision. The wedding was beautiful, but her presence, her influence, loomed over everything. Still, I chose not to argue. I told myself what mattered most was my love and mutual respect with Liam. After the wedding, We moved into the apartment Liam's parents had provided. It was a lovely 2-bedroom, recently renovated, very comfortable. But it was still in his father's name, and his parents still held keys. Eleanor would sweep in unannounced, claiming she was just dropping off a pie or watering the plants. I tried to maintain my polite demeanor, but deep down, I craved a space that was ours. A place where we made the rules. Still, I hesitated to suggest an alternative. After all, I had options, those 3 apartments. But could I really say, "Hey Liam, let's move into one of my places"? Oh, by the way, I have a few? That would trigger 1,000 questions. How would Liam react? Would he feel betrayed that I'd kept such a massive secret? And Eleanor? She'd go into absolute overdrive the moment she sensed I had an escape route from her control. So I waited. Then came that fateful visit with the notary, just 1 week into our marriage. My secret almost burst free, but my silence, my desperate need to hold it in, kept it safe. For now, Liam, to his credit, took the whole prenup ordeal in stride. "We love each other," he'd said. "I'm not planning on getting divorced, so why worry about splitting assets?" He even joked, if Mom's so worried, maybe she should sign a prenup with Dad. We laughed, put it behind us, and tried to ignore Eleanor's increasingly strange behavior. But she didn't stop. Her visits grew more frequent, her nitpicking sharper. "Why are there dirty dishes in the sink? Where were you walking around till midnight?" I tried to be polite, but sometimes the words just spilled out. Liam felt the tension, constantly working to smooth things over. But one day, something happened that truly solidified my fears. Liam was at work, and I was deep in studying for a training program, a requirement for my new job at a consulting firm. Eleanor showed up, unannounced as usual, glanced around, and settled in the kitchen, her eyes fixed on me. "Chloe, you do realize you won't be able to live on just Liam's salary, right?" she stated, rather than asked. "Why not?" I looked up from my laptop, my patience already wearing thin. "I work, too. The pay isn't amazing yet, but it will grow." She shook her head, dismissive. "But you're still studying, aren't you?" "Just some extra training, and who knows when you'll actually start making good money. Meanwhile, you have a household to run, a future to think about, children." "Well, I figured we'd manage," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "It's just the 2 of us for now. Our money is enough. And if anything comes up, my parents are happy to help." "Your parents?" Her eyebrow shot up, clearly taken aback. "Well, maybe, but they're not exactly well off, are they?" I remained silent. My parents weren't wealthy, especially compared to Liam's father with his military pension and savings. But I refused to agree with Eleanor. It would only fuel her condescension. "Eleanor," I said, using the name she'd insisted on, "I'm your second mom. We'll figure things out when the time comes, okay? Please don't worry so much." "Oh, everything seems so simple to your generation," she sighed, pulling her cup of tea closer. "But you have to plan ahead. You can't just let life run its course. Take this apartment, for example." She gestured around. "Sure, it's in my husband's name, but sooner or later, it'll belong to Liam. And in case of a divorce, why are you jumping straight to divorce?" I snapped, unable to hold it in anymore. "We just got married." "I'm not implying anything," she said, a flicker in her eyes. "Life is unpredictable. Anything can happen. Do you 2 have any finances, property? Where would that come from?" I shrugged, playing dumb. "I'm only 23. I just started working." "Right," she conceded, but then her voice dropped, a sly edge to it. "But what if your grandmother left you something?" I heard she had money. A chilling sensation swept over me. Left me something? It was bait. A direct test. I slowly closed my laptop, met her gaze head-on. "My grandmother left us warm memories and a few family keepsakes. Some furniture and clothing. That's all," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I see," she drawled, the words stretched thin, laced with disbelief. "I was just wondering. People said your grandmother was quite the businesswoman. I figured she must have stashed something away." "If she did, we know nothing about it," I lied, my face a mask of calm. She studied me, scrutinizing every micro-expression, searching for a tell, a tremor of doubt. But I had perfected this facade. Well, if you say so, she finally conceded, pushing herself up. Tell Liam I stopped by. Ask him to call me. The moment the door closed behind her, I exhaled, a long, shaky sigh of relief. It was another stark reminder. Telling her about the apartments would be like handing her a loaded weapon, something she would wield to constantly intrude and control. Weeks bled into months. Life settled into a rhythm. My job at the consulting firm was progressing, though I was still studying, pushing myself. Liam was busy at the university. We'd meet in the evenings, exhausted but content. Everything was fine. Except Eleanor still made her unexpected appearances. But Liam, bless his heart, stood his ground, gently but firmly telling her that we would handle things ourselves and that she needed to respect our boundaries. One evening over dinner, we found ourselves talking about the future. Liam, what would you think about us getting our own place? Renting, maybe? I asked, my voice tentative. But we're already in our apartment, he replied, surprised. Why pay rent? It's not just that, I clarified. I just want to feel independent, like we have our own space. Something that doesn't have your father's name on the deed. I get that, Liam said, twirling his fork, lost in thought. But think about it. Renting a decent place? That's what, $2,500 to $3,500 a month? More if it's renovated. That could drain us. Or we take a mortgage, but we don't have a down payment yet. What if I could find the money or the space? The words slipped out before I could stop them. You. He smiled, amused. What? Did you win the lottery? Or are you asking your parents? I caught myself. I couldn't just blurt out the truth, not like that. It could ruin everything. Just a thought, I mumbled. But if we had the means, would you want to move? Yeah, I think I would, he admitted. I get that this setup doesn't feel right, always being watched. But for now, it's just wishful thinking. We're not rich yet. I nodded, saying nothing. What if I just told him? I thought. Showed him one of the apartments, said I'd gotten it recently? Maybe it's time to be honest. But then, the image of Eleanor flashed in my mind, her endless questions, her unannounced visits, her relentless need for control. And Liam's unwavering devotion to her. No, not yet. In any good family drama, timing is everything. And a little mystery never hurts. That's when another character stepped onto our stage, my cousin Rebecca. She was 27, recently divorced, fiercely independent, and worked for a prominent interior design firm. One day she called. Hey, Chloe, I'll be near your place for a project. Mind if I stop by for tea? Of course, come by, I said, genuinely glad. I needed to talk to someone. I hadn't told Rebecca about the apartments either, but at least she wasn't obsessed with my every move like Eleanor. She arrived that evening, and over tea in our cozy kitchen, she asked about married life. I gave vague answers initially, but then I couldn't hold it in. Let me ask you something, I blurted out. Do you think a wife should always tell her husband if she owns something personal? Rebecca snorted. Depends on what it is. A childhood teddy bear? No. But if we're talking real estate or significant money, then yeah, in a marriage, honesty matters. Otherwise, there will be drama. What if I'm scared he'll tell his mom? I asked, my voice small. She laughed. That's what this is about. The infamous mother-in-law. Yeah, I get it. You want to keep it from her, but still be honest with your husband. That's tricky. Maybe tell Liam you have some property, but ask him to keep it private. You think that would work? Depends, Rebecca said, her gaze sharp. Is he more loyal to you or his mom? That's what you have to figure out. So, do you actually have something? Just a small thing, I dodged, then, improvising wildly, a mortgage on a garage. Rebecca shook her head, but didn't push. After she left, I couldn't stop thinking about her words. Telling Liam would mean asking him to keep a serious secret from his mother. And knowing Eleanor, that would put him in an impossible position. Wife wants secrecy. Mom demands truth. He'd be stuck in the middle. No, better to wait. All this tension around the inheritance was starting to fray the edges of our relationship. Liam grew distant, quiet, coming home with a cloud hanging over his head. One evening, I couldn't bear it anymore. Liam, what's going on with you? It feels like you're hiding something from me. There is something, he admitted, and my blood ran cold. For a terrifying second, I thought he knew about the apartments. It's Mom. She keeps pressuring me to convince you to sign that prenup. She calls every single day, saying it's for the best, but I'm just so tired of explaining we don't need it. Why won't she let it go? I sighed, relief flooding me that it wasn't about my secret. Just tell her we're not planning on getting divorced. I try, he said, running a hand through his hair, but she thinks that since you don't come from money, you have nothing to lose. And if we split up, you'll try to take everything. That's insane. I snapped. I don't want anything. I know, he said, but she thinks it's about protecting me and our family. Maybe I should just sign it, I offered, the memory of that insidious clause about declaring assets now echoing in my mind. No, Liam said, shaking his head vehemently. I don't want that. It doesn't sit right with me. But what if it would at least calm her down? It won't, he predicted grimly. She'll just find something else to obsess over. We hugged, and I could feel how utterly torn he was. He loved me, but he hated fighting with his mother. And I was caught in my own private storm. Hide the inheritance or not? Sign the prenup, declare no property, and maybe finally get Eleanor off my back? But a stubborn part of me resisted. What if the truth did come out later? Would they accuse me of lying? I honestly had no idea what to do. A couple of months after the wedding, Eleanor, clearly exhausted by her direct approach, shifted tactics. She began stirring the pot within the wider family, pulling Liam's father and several relatives into her orbit. Suddenly, our lives were filled with family dinners where aunts and cousins dropped subtle, pointed hints about young couples focusing on the greater good, not just personal desires. At one such dinner, I felt like I was under a relentless spotlight, every glance a blade slicing through me. Liam's Aunt Sarah sat across the table, her questions laced with an unsettling curiosity. Chloe, you studied economics, right? Our whole family is full of engineers. And then there's you, a humanities person. Yes, I majored in economics, I nodded, knowing it wasn't technically humanities, but too weary to correct her. So, you're good with money? That degree won't go to waste. There was an undeniable mockery in her tone. I hope not. Have you ever thought about using your knowledge to boost the family's income? She pressed, like, say, investing in real estate? I almost choked on my salad. Real estate? Had Eleanor already whispered her suspicions to Auntie? I fought to stay calm. Well, I replied, I don't exactly have that kind of capital lying around to jump into real estate, and we just got married, so we're a bit tight on cash. Aunt Sarah hummed, unconvinced. But maybe your grandmother left something behind? I heard she was quite resourceful. Maybe, Eleanor chimed in, but Chloe claims she didn't inherit anything. I ignored the sharp bite in her voice, offering my politest smile. Oh, if only. I'd invest in the stock market, or maybe buy a little apartment to rent out. But for now, that's just a dream. Liam sat beside me, growing visibly tenser by the minute. It was clear he despised how his family was cornering me, dissecting my life. Finally, he'd had enough. Can we please change the subject? He cut in, his voice tight. These constant comments about money and grandma's will are getting old. Chloe is my wife. If she doesn't have anything, stop pestering her. And if she does, I'm sure I'd already know. Enough. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. Eleanor looked utterly offended. The other relatives began a low hum of whispers. I felt like an alien, totally out of place. But deep down, a fierce pride swelled in my chest. Liam had stood up for me. Still, one small victory wasn't enough to win this war. Eleanor wasn't done, not by a long shot. This time, Eleanor orchestrated a full-blown scheme. One of the apartments my grandmother left me was in a prime, high-end part of town. The other two were comfortable, but this one, Grandma had snagged it at a bargain, then poured money into a full luxury renovation. I'd been renting it out carefully, with ironclad legal agreements, selecting only reliable tenants. Then, one day, the tenant informed me she was moving out. Her circumstances had changed, and the high rent was no longer feasible. I needed a new renter. Quietly, I contacted the same realtor my grandmother had trusted. He started looking for a good match. And then, whether it was pure coincidence or a meticulously planned setup, I'll never know. Eleanor and Liam's father suddenly started talking about finding a bigger place. They had some savings, they said, exploring options to upgrade. I kept my mouth shut, feigning ignorance. Then Liam mentioned, "Hey Mom, there are some great new places near Madison Avenue. I saw some listings, might be worth checking out." Madison Avenue? Eleanor gasped. That's an expensive area. Yeah, but it's a good investment if you're thinking of upgrading. I froze. Madison Avenue? That was exactly where my luxury apartment was. Please, please don't let them come across my rental listing, I prayed, hoping my name wasn't anywhere public. But I was naive. I hadn't considered that the realtor, unwittingly, might send information to someone who knew me. And that's precisely what happened. He sent a photo of the apartment's stunning living room, with its grand window and park view, to a potential renter. That renter, apparently, shared it with Eleanor. She recognized the furniture. Worse, she recognized the address. She vaguely recalled Grandma having lived on Madison Avenue once. That was enough to ignite suspicion. Still, Eleanor asked the friend to schedule a viewing and take her along. They went. The realtor greeted them, ushered them into the apartment. Eleanor's eyes scanned the interior, immediately recognizing the familiar decor, even family photos I hadn't yet taken down. She walked through every room, soaking in every clue. When they left, she grilled the realtor. "Who owns this apartment?" "I represent the owner," he said cautiously. "We're renting it out legally." But Eleanor was relentless. Maybe she offered a bonus. Or maybe she simply wore him down. Either way, he eventually slipped. He told her it belonged to a young woman named Chloe, inherited from her grandmother. That was all Eleanor needed. The realtor called me immediately afterward, giving me a heads up. "Chloe, a woman came by today asking questions. I didn't give away too much, but she figured out it's your apartment. You might want to be ready for some follow-up." The floor dropped out from under me. So, that was it. She knew. And she wouldn't stop at just one conversation. That evening, when Liam got home, I sat in the kitchen, a bundle of raw anxiety. I knew I had to tell him. It had to come from me, not from Eleanor, who would twist it into some unrecognizable monster. "Liam, there's something I need to tell you," I began, my voice barely a whisper. "I've been putting it off, but I think it's time. I own an apartment. Actually, 3. I inherited them from my grandmother." He froze, his hand suspended over his coffee mug. 3, he repeated, as if he thought I was joking. "Yeah, 3. My grandmother was really into real estate. When she passed, everything came to me. I didn't say anything because I was afraid your mom would turn it into a problem." "Wow," he said, slowly sitting down, silence stretching between us. "How long have you known?" "Since she died." "It's been about a year. Everything's legal. I rent them out, they bring in income. Why didn't you tell me before?" Tears welled in my eyes, hot and fast. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought you'd understand, but I was terrified of how your mom would react. You know how she is. I didn't want her interfering or demanding I hand anything over or pushing us to make it part of the family assets. I didn't want our relationship to be about money." Liam stared at me for a long moment, then stood, pulling me into a fierce, tight hug. "You're such a fool, Chloe," he murmured, a relieved smile on his face, "but you're my fool." He sighed. "Yeah, I wish you'd told me sooner. But I get it. You're right about my mom. And I'm guessing she's already figured it out, which is why you're telling me now." I nodded, choking back tears, and recounted the whole story with the realtor. "I see." Liam sighed again, scrubbing a hand over his face. "All right, consider it forgiven. But no more secrets, okay?" "I promise," I said, wiping my eyes. "So, what do you plan to do with the apartments? Keep renting them out? We can always use the extra income. Or maybe sell one and finally buy something for ourselves. We'll talk about it." Liam sat back down, rubbing his temples. "What about my mom?" "She's going to throw a fit, probably," I said grimly, "but we'll handle it." He smiled. "Yeah, together, we can handle anything." In that moment, I realized I loved him even more than before. Maybe hiding the inheritance had been a mistake. But at least now we were united, a solid front against the outside pressure. Our bond had grown stronger, if only for that evening. But Eleanor wouldn't be Eleanor if she gave up that easily. The very next day, she called Liam, demanding we come to their house. She had something important to discuss. We both knew important meant a lecture and a fresh dose of blame aimed squarely at me. Still, we decided to go, hoping to finally clear the air. When we arrived, Eleanor sat in the living room with Liam's dad and, of course, Aunt Sarah. This was undeniably a family tribunal. We greeted everyone, and I tried to project confidence, despite the tremor in my hands. Eleanor fixed me with a glacial stare. "Chloe, we found out you own 3 apartments," she announced, like an inquisitor exposing a crime. "And you've been hiding this from us?" "Yes, I do," I replied calmly. "So what?" "It's an inheritance, personal property I received before the marriage." "But why did you lie?" Aunt Sarah interjected, her voice sharp. "We asked several times, and you said you had nothing." "I didn't lie," I countered, my voice hardening. "I just didn't think I was obligated to tell you. It's personal business." I didn't owe anyone an explanation. "Well, now it's out in the open," Liam's dad said, trying to sound more diplomatic. "Chloe, you have to understand, we're family. Things like this are better shared openly." When I saw how aggressively you were all poking into my and my parents' financial background, I admitted, I decided silence was safer. Yes, it was a mistake, but not a huge one. "Not huge," Eleanor snapped, her voice rising. "Don't you see how this reflects on the whole family? Now people will think you've been deceiving us, or that we're gold diggers." "Mom." Liam stood up, his voice booming. "What people? Who cares what anyone thinks? This is between me and Chloe. No one else." "No, son," she insisted. "It's not just about you. When you got married, we all became one family. And I don't like that your wife hid 3 apartments. Who knows what else she might be hiding? Maybe she doesn't even plan on having children. Maybe she's just using our family for gain." That was it. Something inside me snapped. "That's outrageous," I exclaimed, my voice trembling with indignation. What a horrible thing to say. "Mom, stop," Liam roared, raising his voice even louder. "That's enough. Yes, Chloe owns some property. That's great. Why can't we just be happy that someone in the family is financially secure? Why does it always have to turn into suspicion? Because she kept it a secret," Eleanor insisted, her face red. "That means she doesn't trust us. And if she doesn't trust us, who knows what else she might do behind our backs? Or maybe it's because we gave her plenty of reasons not to trust us." Liam's father suddenly chimed in, his words cutting through the tension, silencing the entire room. He looked directly at Eleanor. "Eleanor, you've been pushing from the start. Dragging notaries into things, forcing prenups. No wonder she kept quiet. So now you're taking her side?" Eleanor shrieked. "I'm on the side of common sense," he replied calmly. "Chloe's choice was questionable, sure, but I understand it. She probably assumed you'd try to dictate how she should use the apartments. And that's exactly what you were planning, wasn't it?" Eleanor said nothing, but her face spoke volumes. Of course, she had wanted control. Of course, she had plans to sell, reinvest, decide what was best for the family. But I, Chloe, wasn't giving her that power. "Look," I said, forcing my voice to remain calm. "I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I love Liam. The apartments were a gift from my grandmother, and what I do with them is my decision. Liam and I will figure things out together. Maybe one day we'll use the money to buy a whole house, or we can even live in one of them," Liam offered, a gleam in his eye. "Why not? We're a young couple." "Exactly," I nodded. "We can live there or rent them out. We'll decide together. I'm ready to handle everything properly, but the apartments are mine. I'm not giving them up." "I'm sorry, but that's final." "But if you use your inheritance to buy a new home, that home becomes marital property," Eleanor interjected, eager to show off her newfound legal expertise. "Which means Liam has a right to it." "So what?" I shrugged. "He's my husband. Of course, I'd share with him. But what I care about most right now is that no one interferes or tells us what to do." Aunt Sarah, surprisingly, shook her head. "Young people these days are all about independence." And that's exactly what we admire. Liam's dad nodded in agreement. A heavy, pregnant silence followed. Then Eleanor exhaled slowly, a sound like surrender. Fine. I won't argue anymore. But understand this. In our family, we've always talked things through. I just don't want your secret properties to come between you two later on. We'll deal with it, Liam replied, his voice firm. Thanks for your concern. And, just like that, the conversation ended. We left shortly after. I caught Eleanor watching me with a look of lingering disapproval, a deep-seated resentment. But it was clear, I wouldn't be bending to her rules, and she would simply have to live with that. She wasn't going to stop trying to control us, but I was done playing her game. Life, surprisingly, moved on. My career at the consulting firm flourished. I was given more engaging projects, and my salary grew. Liam earned a steady income at the university, supplementing it with private tutoring. We were financially stable. And with the secret finally out, we had the freedom to move into one of my apartments, a place entirely our own. No more sharing space with his parents. We chose the most practical one, not the flashy Madison Avenue gem, but a comfortable, moderately sized place that wouldn't invite sneers of, "Oh, look at them living like royalty." After some light remodeling and a couple of months shuttling between our parents' places, we finally moved in. For me, it was a true celebration. I was the lady of my house, no longer dreading the jingle of an unauthorized key in the lock. Liam was thrilled too, though I could still sense a lingering question in his eyes. Why didn't you just tell me sooner? I tried to explain, because of your mom. He understood, but a small part of him still carried that sting of hurt. Eleanor, on the other hand, was distinctly unhappy. She called repeatedly. So, when can I come see your new place? I'm curious, you know. I dodged and weaved. Oh, the renovation isn't finished. We're too busy. Liam's working late. Eventually, Liam suggested we just invite her over. He believed hiding would only make things worse. We needed to aim for a polite peace. So, the day came. Eleanor arrived, surveyed the apartment, and, predictably, her first words were criticism. Well, this place is spacious, Chloe. But isn't it a bit flashy? That furniture looks expensive. It was already here, I replied, sticking to the truth. My grandmother lived here before. She had good taste. And I bet the utility bills are sky high. Are you sure you can manage? We're managing just fine, Mom, Liam interjected, his tone calm. We both work. And have you thought, Chloe, if you have children someday, will this layout work? Maybe it needs to be redesigned. Redesigned? That was news to me. I saw Liam roll his eyes. He hated his mother's micromanaging. I kept my voice even. The layout is fine. If we want to, we can turn the other room into a nursery. It's too soon to worry about that. I see. So, you're not planning for children yet. I realized this was her next pressure tactic. For Eleanor, kids meant more control, telling us how to raise them, what to do. But Liam and I had already decided we weren't in a rush. We'll decide when the time is right, Liam said firmly. Let's just have some tea. Eleanor pursed her lips, but held back. All right, tea it is. I actually came with good intentions. I thought I'd bring you some things for the house. A tablecloth, maybe some curtains, but I figured you've already bought everything. Liam smiled. Thanks, Mom. We've got it covered. She understood the subtle message. Her offer of gifts, and with them, her quiet presence in our home, had been gently declined. Half an hour later, Eleanor gathered her things and left, unable to find a single crack in our new life to wedge herself into. I breathed a quiet sigh of relief. Time went on. Things between Liam and me were good. He'd tease me sometimes. So, millionaire, how much did you rake in from rent today? And he'd laugh. I'd smile and shoot back, better question. How many academic papers did you publish? Those little jokes showed how well we'd come to understand each other. But the peace didn't last long. As it turned out, Eleanor had another scheme brewing. This time, her objective was to rope me into their family business. After retiring from the military, Liam's father had started a small transportation company, a few trucks handling deliveries. Eleanor, managing the books, was eager to expand it. And for that, they needed investment. And where better to get money than from Chloe? After all, I had 3 apartments and a steady rental income. Why let that go to waste? We're all family, they must have thought. One day, Liam's dad stopped by. Chloe, hear me out. We've got a great idea. We want to invest in a new truck, hire more drivers, really grow the business. It'll bring in good profit. You'd get a share of the earnings. That sounds interesting, I replied politely, trying not to offend him. But I'm not ready to invest in the transport business. I don't know the field, and I'm not comfortable risking my savings without guarantees. But it's a family business, he said, raising an eyebrow. And I'm giving you my word. We are reliable people. I don't doubt that, I said carefully. But business can be unpredictable. We're just now settling into our own place, and we need funds for future expenses. For now, I'd rather not invest big sums. Unlike Eleanor, Liam's father was more reasonable. He simply nodded. I understand, but if you change your mind, you know where to find us. But the very next day, Eleanor called. Chloe, what was that conversation with my husband? You refused to invest? Yes, I confirmed. I'm not ready to invest in something like that. But we're family. Is that how you treat your own? I'm not obligated to fund every project someone suggests just because we're related. Of course not. But families help each other. I'll help if someone's seriously ill or in a real emergency. But putting money into a business that might fail? That's not charity, it's risk. You don't trust us? Her tone sharpened, cutting. I don't trust unverified investments. I'm sorry, but it's my decision. She hung up. And I knew exactly what that meant. Another storm was coming. And I was right. Eleanor wasted no time. She began spreading rumors that I was greedy, unwilling to support the family, hoarding my money. I started hearing it from people I barely knew. Why won't you help your husband's family? I just brushed them off. I owed no one an explanation for my financial decisions. Liam stood by me, solid as a rock. He affirmed my right to choose. But even he couldn't stop his mother's ceaseless chatter. We began seeing her less and less. At family gatherings, she'd pointedly ignore me, speaking to Liam as if I were invisible. He hated it, but tried not to escalate things. I didn't want to either, but I knew deep down that this was how it would be. Eleanor had lost her chance to control my money and property, so now she would just sulk and gossip. Life, however, has a way of putting things into perspective. Their transportation business hit a brutal rough patch. Competition soared, legal issues mounted. They had to drain their savings, ending up with almost nothing. Eleanor was furious, railing against me for not helping. Yet, the truth was undeniable. If I had invested, that money would have vanished too. My doubts had been entirely justified. Meanwhile, Liam and I were building our life. We lovingly fixed up our apartment, started talking about the future. A year later, we decided we were ready for a child. I got pregnant, and we welcomed a beautiful baby boy. We named him Leo. Of course, Eleanor was thrilled to have a grandson. She rushed to the hospital with flowers, all smiles, pretending every past grudge was forgotten. But the moment I got Leo home and started raising him my way, the old patterns returned with a vengeance. Suddenly, everything I did was wrong. How I fed him, how I dressed him, when I took him outside. And then the subtle hints began again. Maybe you could let us stay in one of your apartments while we're struggling? We could rent it out, rebuild the business, and pay you back later. Mom, stop, Liam cut in, his voice sharp. We're not discussing this. That was the moment my grandmother's advice finally resonated with crystal clarity. Don't tell anyone about the apartments. No one but your husband, and only once you're sure of where he stands. If his family starts pressuring you, stay silent as long as you can. In the end, I didn't stay silent forever. But I held the line long enough to keep control over what was mine. And because of that, I held on to control over my life. I guess you could say that's where the first act of our story ends. But in family dramas, nothing truly ends forever. Still, here's the crucial takeaway from that initial storm. I got married, said nothing about my inheritance. A week later, my mother-in-law showed up with a notary, trying to lock me into a contract designed to dispossess me. My silence then protected what was mine. And later, when the truth inevitably emerged, Liam stood by me. We battled through fights, tension, and endless drama, but our love, our bond, held firm. My status as the daughter-in-law with 3 apartments remained unchanged. They were mine and mine alone. Today, we're living our life, raising our son, Leo. I'm still thriving in consulting, and Liam at the university. Eleanor still tries to interfere now and then, but Liam and I handle things as a united front. We don't let her cross our boundaries, but we still do our best to respect her role as Liam's mother and Leo's grandmother. Looking back, I don't regret hiding the truth from her. Maybe I should have told Liam sooner, but at that time, I saw how hard it was for him to stand up to his mother. I truly believe our relationship might not have survived that early, brutal storm. We needed time to grow stronger, to become more grounded in who we were as a couple. And we got there. No notary, no manipulation, no amount of pressure from Eleanor could break what we had painstakingly built together. In that, we were stronger than she ever expected. And now, when I think back to that day, the doorbell ringing, Eleanor standing there with that notary, I sometimes smile. Thank God I kept quiet, I whispered to myself. Because deep down, my gut was right. Yes, honesty is vital in marriage. But when you're dealing with a family that is overbearing and manipulative, sometimes silence, especially at first, can protect everything you've built. Now, Liam and I have no secrets between us, and that's what truly matters. As for Eleanor, she's on her own path. Maybe one day she'll fully accept my choices. And if not, well, we've learned how to live without her approval. So, this is a story about boundaries, about how sometimes those boundaries took the tangible shape of 3 apartments left by a wise grandmother. And how silence, when wielded wisely, can actually save a family from disaster. It might sound like a paradox, but it's the truth of my life. If there's a lesson here, it's this. Don't rush to show all your cards. Wait until you're absolutely sure the person beside you values you, not what you own, and that their family won't try to use your trust against you. Our journey, of course, isn't over. We're raising Leo, thinking about another child, building our careers. Eleanor, I'm sure, will keep trying to push her way back in, because family drama never truly ends. But we've been through enough to know how to handle it. And if anyone ever shows up at our door with a notary again, this time I'll be ready. With paperwork, with boundaries, and with all the confidence I need to protect what's mine. Because life has taught me one thing. Everything, emotional and material, must be protected, both legally and personally. That's how you ensure no surprise relatives with papers can ever shake your peace again. I look at my little son, peacefully sleeping in his crib, and think, may he grow up surrounded by love, free from any sort of family manipulation. Liam and I will do everything we can to ensure he feels happy and secure. And as for my apartments, maybe one day, when he's grown, one of them will give him a head start in life. That'll be my gift to his future. But that's another story. The beginning of our marriage was loud and messy, straight out of a family drama. Accusations, notaries, family interventions, arguments about money and inheritance. But we made it through. And the moral of this long story is simple. Love each other, trust each other, but never let even your closest relatives cross your personal boundaries. And if you have an inheritance, be prepared. Someone will come for it. Still, if you've got someone by your side who truly loves you and stands with you, even the most persistent notary won't scare you away. That's my story. No magic, no miracles, just real life, raw emotions, drama, and in the end, strong love. And so I wrap up this tale about how sometimes keeping quiet can be your greatest protection. I look at my now 2-year-old son, Leo, and can't help but smile at his boundless curiosity and cleverness. When Leo was still tiny, cradled in his crib, I genuinely thought the hardest part was behind us. We had fiercely defended our independence, carved out our own space, navigated the treacherous waters of inheritance, and built a stable family life. But life, as always, had new twists in store. Our family saga, it seemed, was still unfolding. No magic, certainly, but plenty of emotional peaks and valleys. At first, things were relatively calm. We were basking in the joys of parenthood. Liam, the enthusiastic father, filled our home with toys and books, while I juggled work and the delightful chaos of household chores. My parents, who lived in another part of the city, were wonderfully supportive, helping with Leo whenever I asked. They were respectful, never intrusive. Only Eleanor continued her pattern of unannounced visits. Spotting a pile of laundry or scattered toys, she'd launch into a new round of judgment. Chloe, really? A child could trip over these cars. And when's the last time you mopped the floor? She'd scowl, scanning our living room, now thoroughly cluttered with Leo's vibrant things. We're fine, Mom, Liam would say, gently stepping in, trying to deflect from my perceived housekeeping crimes. Leo likes it here. It's his space. And anyway, we just got back from a walk. Didn't have time to clean up yet. Honestly, compared to the time she showed up with a notary or demanded money for a business, these little complaints barely registered. We'd grown accustomed to them, often thinking, whatever. At least she's not poking around in our finances. But it soon became clear her ideas about money, business, and inheritance hadn't disappeared. She'd just hit pause. And now she was gearing up for the next round. This time with a new angle. Liam and I had been toying with the idea of selling one of my remaining apartments and buying a house closer to nature. It would be amazing for Leo to have space to play outdoors, beyond just the apartment block. And I had to admit, I dreamed of a big yard, filled with flowers and a patio for family dinners. Liam liked the idea, but hesitated. Moving to the suburbs would mean sacrificing convenience, longer commutes, more school runs. We're not talking about some remote village, I argued. There are suburbs with great infrastructure, schools, shops, buses. And the peace. The fresh air. In the end, we decided to hold off. Instead, we focused on upgrading our current place to make it even more comfortable for Leo. We transformed one room into a proper kid's room, bright wallpaper, endless toys, overflowing bookshelves. Everything felt like it was finally falling into place. Then Eleanor showed up again. This time, she wasn't alone. With her was a woman I'd never seen before, maybe in her 40s. Chloe, this is Michelle Miller, Eleanor introduced her guest, without bothering to explain Michelle's relationship to the family. She's a realtor, works in real estate. We thought you might need her help. I frowned slightly as I took their coats. Why would I need a realtor all of a sudden? Well, you do own 3 apartments, Eleanor said, her voice dripping with an almost saccharine, fake concern. Maybe Michelle can help you manage those assets. Then, she raised her voice, as if making a grand announcement. Maybe you two could even discuss selling one of them and investing in something promising. I tensed. This was sounding all too familiar, a chilling echo of their old pitch about the transport business. Thanks, but I'll handle my properties myself, I said, still polite, but feeling irritation prickle under my skin. I already work with someone I trust. Michelle is excellent, Eleanor insisted. And who knows, maybe you'll even want to expand a 4th property. Now it was blatantly obvious. She'd brought Michelle here specifically to nudge me toward some scheme, perhaps another attempt to rope me into one of her investment ideas. Eleanor, I said, as calmly and politely as I could manage, I'm always open to meeting new people. But if I ever decide to buy or sell, I'll let you know. For now, we're not planning any deals. Michelle offered a pleasant, professional smile. Of course, no pressure. If you ever need anything, Eleanor has my number. They left about 10 minutes later. Eleanor looked utterly bitter. You'd think I had just ruined a $1 million deal. I just smirked to myself. Back at it again. I hadn't even had time to relax when Liam came home, saw the look on my face. Let me guess, he said, weary your mom. With a realtor this time. Trying to get me to do some deal. I'm sure she's still hoping I'll invest in their business, I muttered. Unbelievable. Liam rubbed his face, clearly frustrated. I'll talk to her. She needs to stop bringing strangers into our home. Deal. He did talk to her, but Eleanor's stubbornness was unshakable. She complained to her husband, to Aunt Sarah, to every relative within earshot, that I was closed off, unwilling to listen. I just shrugged. Let them talk as long as they stayed out of my business. Then, unexpectedly, my cousin Rebecca stepped into the picture. She'd been living her own busy life and usually steered clear of our family dramas, but she'd heard about Eleanor's latest stunts and gave me a call. Chloe, have you thought more about buying a house? I'm working on an architectural project right now. If you want to build something from scratch, maybe we can do it together. I like the idea, I admitted. But I'm afraid it'll set Eleanor off again. She'll think I'm choosing to invest in a house instead of their business. Oh, forget what she thinks, Rebecca scoffed. It's your money, your inheritance, your life. The more I thought about it, the more I realized she was absolutely right. And slowly, the idea began to take root in my mind. Maybe it was time to stop worrying about what Eleanor might say and start building the life we actually wanted. A house with a big living room, a crackling fireplace, and a sun-drenched garden for Leo. But before we could make any decisions, a new wave of drama crashed over us. This time, it wasn't about money, but parenting. Leo was growing into a lively, energetic little boy. When he turned 3, we enrolled him in a fantastic preschool nearby. And right away, Eleanor's watchdog mode activated. Are you sure that place is good? I heard the teachers are strict. They don't even take the kids outside that much. Wouldn't it be better if you went to the preschool near us so I could pick him up? I calmly explained. Liam looked into it, and the reviews are excellent. It's close to our place. Driving him across the city doesn't make sense. Why not? I could drive him. Liam quickly shut that down. Mom, Chloe and I already made the decision. It's done. Thankfully, she didn't push that time. But soon, she found a new angle. She started insisting Leo needed special developmental classes, perhaps a tutor to start reading early. I tried to stay polite, explaining we'd decide ourselves when Leo was ready for letters. No need to force academic pressure on a 3-year-old, I'd said. But Liam was already stacking letter blocks at his age, she exclaimed. So Leo stacks blocks too, I thought. What's the problem? But she kept going. If only I could take charge of Leo's development. I've always had a knack for teaching. I smiled a little too sweetly. I don't think you'd have the patience to turn him into a genius, Eleanor. This kind of chatter continued all summer while Leo adjusted to preschool. Every visit, Eleanor found something new to criticize, something we were doing wrong, something Leo was missing out on. Thankfully, Liam remained calm, shutting down most of her remarks, and I'd learned to let her complaints roll right off me. Then, suddenly, my health took a terrifying hit. I had to step back from work and even ask my parents to help care for Leo. It all happened so fast. I was constantly exhausted, plagued by persistent lower back and stomach pain. Doctors discovered some gynecological issues requiring surgery. Thankfully, it wasn't anything critical, and within a month, I was back on my feet. But that period really shook up our family life. The first thing that happened? Eleanor, like a vulture circling, swooped in, attempting to assume the role of primary caregiver. She showed up at our place, announcing, "Chloe, you've got surgery coming up. You can't take care of the house or the baby. I'll move in and take control of everything." The words "move in" made me freeze. No way. I was grateful for the offer, I truly was, but I knew Eleanor. Given the chance, she'd rearrange every piece of furniture, reorganize every cupboard, and run our household entirely her way. Liam tensed up too. Mom, that's way too much. Chloe's parents already said they'd help out. And I'm going to take some time off. I'll be home while she recovers. If we need extra support, we'll call. Eleanor looked utterly offended. Right. I see. I'm not welcome anymore. Don't come crying to me when you need a pair of helping hands. I worried Liam might cave, but he didn't. He stood firm. His mother would not be living with us. Besides, I was an adult, not helpless, and the surgery wasn't so severe that I'd be out of commission for months. In the end, I recovered in blissful peace, spending a couple of weeks at my parents' place. No worries about cooking or cleaning. Leo stayed with Liam or visited me, brought over by my dad. My mom, Grace, handled all the chores, and I simply rested. Want me to get you more vitamins? She'd ask one evening as I sat quietly reading. I've got everything the doctor prescribed, I'd smile. I just need time and rest. Eleanor, predictably, was not happy. Her heroic help wasn't needed. From a distance, she started complaining to Liam over the phone. Oh, so your wife's mother is more important now? And I'm no one, I guess. Liam patiently tried to reason with her. Mom, come on. It's just more comfortable for Chloe over there. She doesn't have to adapt to someone else's place. It's her childhood home. Let's not turn this into a fight. Eleanor begrudgingly dropped it, but clearly didn't let it go. Soon enough, she found a new way to express her discontent. By the time I came back home, fully recovered, Eleanor's family council had apparently convened and reached a new decision. Her husband, Aunt Sarah, and some random relatives had concluded our son, Leo, needed to spend more time with extended family to be properly raised. Apparently, I was severely lacking in traditional values. They started talking about it openly. Let's take Leo to our country house on the weekends. He should get used to being around his extended family. Sure, the repairs aren't finished yet, but it's basically a summer home. He could bond with his uncles and aunts there. I remained polite but firm. Thank you, but Leo is still too little to be away from us for long. He's not used to your house, and everything there is new to him. Besides, we enjoy spending weekends with him ourselves. Of course, Eleanor didn't like that answer. This is just selfish parenting. It's good for kids to have a change of environment. And you don't mind him visiting your parents. Why block him from seeing his paternal grandmother? I had to remind her there was a significant difference between a couple of hours at Grandma's and a full weekend away in an unfamiliar place. I wasn't even sure the house was safe. Last I'd heard, the roof needed work, and there were electrical issues. And with her husband still trying to salvage his failing business, I seriously doubted they had the means to make the place kid-friendly. But Eleanor wouldn't budge. You're insulting our whole family. You don't think we're capable of taking care of a child. We want Leo to grow up trusting all his relatives. Liam, seeing I was about to lose my temper, stepped in. Mom, we're not against visits, but Leo's still more comfortable with us. Let's give it time. When he's older, maybe 5 or so, we can talk about weekends away. That ended the conversation for the time being. But I knew it wasn't over. I could see it in Eleanor's eyes. She was already plotting her next move, still determined to prove she was the one who called the shots in this family. While all this drama simmered, my cousin Rebecca was soaring up the career ladder in interior design. One evening, she called, brimming with excitement. Chloe, you won't believe it. I'm working on a premium suburban development. They're going to start selling lots and houses soon. Pricey, but the area is amazing. You and Liam ever think about investing in something like that? It got me thinking. We were happy in our apartment, but long-term, I'd always dreamed of having a house, even just for weekends and holidays. I brought it up with Liam. Let's check it out, he said. See where it is and what the prices are. If it looks promising, maybe we buy a lot and build later. We drove out to see it. It was about an hour outside the city, surrounded by lush forest, near a winding river, clean air, a genuinely peaceful vibe. But yes, definitely not cheap. I figured if I sold one of my mid-range apartments, it would just about cover the lot. The only question was it worth it? Building a house is neither quick nor inexpensive. Back home, we weighed our options. You know, Liam said, I really like the place, but let's be honest. If we buy the lot, we'll still have to pay for utilities, designs, construction. We don't have enough saved to do it all at once. It might just sit there empty for years while we go barbecue on the weekends. Might be smart, might not. Then again, the value could go up. It's an investment, and if we change our minds, we can always sell it. After a lot of back and forth, we decided to go for it. I knew that the moment I put an apartment up for sale, Eleanor would catch wind and, true to form, try again to redirect my money into their failing business. I wasn't wrong. I discussed everything with my longtime realtor, the same trusted professional my grandmother had used. The apartment was in high demand, and we found buyers quickly. But during the paperwork process, Eleanor somehow found out the apartment was up for sale. She showed up, fuming. Chloe, what is this? I hear you're selling your apartment and didn't even consult us. Why would I? I replied coolly. It's my property. But we're family. And I have an idea. Invest the money in our trucking business. We've started rebuilding, bought a couple of used trucks, but we need one more brand new. The profits will be yours. I sighed inwardly. So predictable. Sorry, Eleanor, but Liam and I already decided to buy a lot in a new housing development. That's more important for our family than another truck. Out of other moves, she tried playing the guilt card with Liam. Son, are you even thinking straight? That area doesn't even have a preschool or a clinic. Maybe talk some sense into your wife. Mom, this is our decision, Liam said, trying to keep his voice calm. We've thought it through. One day, we'll build a house. It's a long-term project for us. You'd be better off putting that money toward Leo's education abroad, she shot back. That house will just end up half-built and abandoned. I realized then there was no point in reasoning with her. Sure, we didn't know yet how we'd fund the construction, but just knowing we'd have a piece of land, an option to live outside the city, gave us immense peace of mind. I stood firm. We've made our decision. The sale is nearly finalized. The money will go straight into the land. Eleanor went quiet. Then she muttered, "You'll regret this," and slammed the door on her way out. We sold the apartment and bought the lot. Now, we just needed to figure out when to start building. We weren't in a rush. We wanted Rebecca's help with the design, time to save up, and to avoid living in the middle of a half-dug foundation. Everything was going pretty smoothly until Eleanor unleashed an unexpected new tactic. She decided to drag my parents into the drama. One day, I got a call from my mom, Grace. "Chloe, Eleanor just called. She asked us to talk some sense into you. Said you're about to make a huge mistake with your inheritance." "And what did you say?" I asked, already clenching my fists. "I told her you're smart and can make your own decisions." But she wasn't happy. She said that if the money's going toward land, then clearly you don't care about helping their family. I almost laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. What? Liam and Leo don't count as part of her family if we're talking about building a future home, but I wasn't laughing for long. It was clear Eleanor was now desperately trying to recruit allies, even trying to pressure my side of the family. "Mom, don't worry," I reassured her. "I've got everything under control." Eleanor's just stressed because of their business problems. She wanted me to give her the money for trucks, but you know, it's my money, my life. "Of course, sweetheart, don't worry. We're with you." That helped me calm down a bit. But inside, a quiet, simmering fury was building. I wanted nothing more than to shut Eleanor down once and for all, so she'd never try to pull this again. Still, I kept myself in check. I knew an open confrontation wouldn't bring us peace. The next day, Liam suggested, "How about we invite both our parents to dinner? A nice restaurant. Try to smooth things over, show everyone we're about respect, and maybe finally end these silly power plays." "You really think it'll work?" I asked, skeptical. "I don't know," he conceded, "but maybe it'll take the edge off. They'll still be seeing each other at birthdays and holidays." We booked a table at a quiet restaurant and invited both couples. My parents, Grace, and my dad arrived first, taking their seats. Then came Eleanor and Liam's father. She walked in like a queen, ready to declare war. To his credit, her husband smiled and greeted everyone kindly. The conversation started with polite pleasantries, health, the weather, Leo's progress at preschool. Then it shifted to work, who was doing what. I desperately hoped we could tiptoe around the money and real estate. But of course, Eleanor raised her glass of wine, squinted her eyes, and declared, "Well, then, let's drink to the day when everyone in this family finally learns to trust each other and stops hiding profitable deals and future plans." Liam and I exchanged a loaded glance. My parents remained politely silent, clearly unwilling to be drawn into the drama. I turned to Eleanor, my voice as calm as I could make it. "Eleanor, I hope you're not implying that anyone here is hiding things on purpose. We've already cleared everything up." "Well, you never ask for advice," she said, shaking her head, an accusation in itself. "Do we need to consult people on every decision?" Liam stepped in, his voice firm. "You and Dad run your business however you like. You don't check with us first." His father nodded in agreement. "Liam's right. We make our own choices, and so should you too, Eleanor. Let's admit, they're grown-ups now." Eleanor sighed heavily, took a long sip of wine, and then turned to my mom. "Grace, what do you think? Is it normal for a family to make big decisions without consulting anyone?" My mom, ever so wise, simply smiled. I think people ask for advice when they trust someone and want to hear their opinion. But demanding that someone consult you? That's too much. The kids will figure it out on their own. It was obvious Eleanor hated that answer, especially since it supported my side. But she held it together. Fine, let's not ruin the evening. Hopefully, we'll learn to work as a team someday. I breathed a silent sigh of relief, thinking maybe the storm was finally calming. But as we were saying goodbye, Eleanor leaned in, her voice a low, venomous whisper. You think I'm just going to back off? No. My family is my family, and you don't get to ignore our problems. We'll talk again. A chill ran down my spine, but before I could respond, she was already heading to the coat check. Liam shot me a questioning look. What did she say? I just shrugged. Same old song. We headed home. I was seething inside, but didn't want to show it in front of Liam and escalate things further. He noticed my tension. I can tell my mom did something again. I'm sorry. She just can't accept that you're independent. But these are our choices. We have every right. I know, I said, I try not to react anymore, but honestly, I'm exhausted. It feels like she'll never stop. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced. This wasn't over. Eleanor still had one powerful tool left, using Leo as leverage, trying to control how we planned his future. I had a strong, unsettling feeling another round of manipulation was coming, and I was right. A few months later, after we'd finalized the land purchase and I started scouting architects, besides Rebecca, who had generously offered to help with plans, I got a call from Leo's preschool director. Hi, Chloe. I wanted to touch base. Your son's grandmother stopped by recently. She asked us to give Leo extra attention. I just wanted to clarify how we should respond to that. I froze. Which grandmother? I believe it was Eleanor. She said she wants to attend his classes, monitor his development, and bring in educational materials. I nearly laughed at how utterly ridiculous it sounded, but inside, I was absolutely fuming. Now she was interfering at school. I see, I managed, my voice tight. Let's be clear. We don't mind if Leo's grandmother attends open events or celebrations, if that's allowed, but we don't want any special treatment for him. He should be treated just like the other kids. The director, sounding relieved, agreed and apologized for the inconvenience. I immediately called Liam. Did your mom seriously go to Leo's preschool and start making demands? What? Liam's voice boomed with fury. I had no idea. I'm calling her right now. Later, he told me Eleanor had actually tried to set up private lessons for Leo and even wanted to sit in on them herself. The director had politely but firmly refused, explaining it went against school policy. Eleanor then insisted they focus more on reading with Leo and handed over books she'd brought from home. Liam had a very stern talk with her, telling her to stop doing things behind our backs. Her reaction was exactly what we expected. I was only trying to do what's best for my grandson. You're bad parents if you don't support his advanced learning. We just looked at each other, speechless. What advanced learning? He's 3.5. He's doing just fine. Amidst all this, Liam and I started to really cherish the moments when it was just the three of us. Weekends at the zoo, walks in the park, or little trips to our newly acquired plot of land, where we'd only just marked the boundaries and built a small, rustic shed for tools. Leo would run through the tall grass, his laughter bubbling up, and we'd feel this overwhelming sense of freedom. Out there, we were miles from the city noise, from Eleanor's calls, her criticism, her unsolicited advice. One afternoon, sitting on folding chairs next to our still empty plot, I said to Liam, "Hey, what if we put up a tiny summer cabin here? Just something simple and wooden, so we can stay overnight. Then, when we save up more, we can start building for real." Liam's face lit up. "That's an awesome idea. It'll be our little oasis." He paused, looking around, eyes sparkling. "Honestly, I'm already thinking if I can work remotely, we could spend the whole summer out here." Right away, I pictured it all in my head. Us, living in a simple little house, Leo running around the yard in the morning, kicking a ball, a few small garden beds filled with herbs, us grilling in the evening, and at sunset, just listening to the birds. It felt like the perfect escape from the endless family drama. But we both knew, If Eleanor ever found out about this plan, she'd try to insert herself into it somehow. And, technically, nothing was stopping her from buying a plot of land next door and moving right in. What then? Would we end up living under constant surveillance even there? Let's just hope she doesn't decide to follow us, Liam said, almost reading my mind. Ugh, don't even joke, I muttered. But honestly, those plots are expensive for now, so she probably won't take the risk. Things aren't exactly great with their business. Liam nodded, putting his arm around me. We sat there, watching Leo chase soap bubbles through the grass. I wanted to believe we'd be okay. But being part of a family soap opera means surprises never stop. And sure enough, one hit us just when we least expected it. The heating system in our current home, the apartment Liam and I were living in, suddenly broke down. The pipes were ancient, never replaced even back when my grandmother lived there. We hadn't done a major renovation either, kept pushing it off as something for later. And now, in the dead of winter, the pipes started leaking. One of the mains even burst. We called the plumbers, but it took them a few days to fix everything. The apartment became damp, Leo started coughing, and Liam was fuming because the repairs were going to cost a fortune. That's when Eleanor, with her uncanny timing, showed up. I told you you'd need my help with this kind of stuff. This is a full-scale overhaul, and you can't handle it on your own. I mentally smirked. Of course, she'd love to manage the renovation, too. We did have money set aside. Thankfully, I was still earning from renting out the other 2 apartments, and Liam and I had savings for the house. But replacing an entire heating system was still a big expense. Thanks for your concern, Mom, Liam said calmly. We've got the funds. We'll hire good specialists and make sure it's done right. Why don't you just come live with us while it's all going on? Eleanor asked hopefully. The thought of moving in with Eleanor and Liam's father for an indefinite period made me shudder. I could already hear her now. I get to supervise everything. Honestly, I'd rather stay at my parents' place. At least there, I wouldn't get guilt-tripped every hour. Thanks for the offer, I said politely. But we've already planned to stay at my parents' while this is sorted. Of course. Always the wife's family, Eleanor grumbled. Liam, raising his voice slightly, cut in. Mom, enough. Grace's apartment is spacious. You and Dad are already crammed in your 2-bedroom. You've got your own stuff to worry about. Why make it harder for everyone? That ended the conversation, and we avoided a full-blown argument this time. While the repairs were underway, I stayed at my parents' with Leo. Liam bounced back and forth, checking in on the workers, sometimes crashing at our damp apartment. It was exhausting, but it also made me think even more seriously about building the new house. We need to speed up the country house project, I told Rebecca. We need a backup home. When Rebecca heard about our mess, she said, I'll sketch a great concept for you. If you can find a decent construction crew, you could break ground by fall. And the money, I muttered, already thinking of how much the apartment repairs had eaten up. I get it, she said. It's a lot, but start with the foundation. Later, you can work on the frame. Building takes years sometimes, but at least you'll be moving forward. I lit up. Told her we'd think it over. Liam agreed, but warned me. Just remember, if we start building, it'll either mean taking out a loan or using up all our savings. Otherwise, it'll drag on forever. I still have rental income from 1 apartment, I reminded him, and I've got some tucked away. We might be able to pull it off without a loan, but we'll have to tighten our belts. We talked it through and decided to start small and see how it goes. The apartment renovation wrapped up in a couple of months. We moved back in, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Then came another bombshell. Liam's dad announced that their transport business had officially collapsed. His partners walked out. Debts piled up. They'd had to sell off assets. Suddenly, Eleanor and her husband had no money left to live on. His pension was a pittance. Her job was unreliable and only part-time at that. One day, Liam came home from meeting with them, sat down heavily, and said, Chloe, it's bad. Mom's pushing Dad to sell their apartment and downsize, but even that won't cover their debts. That's really sad, I said quietly, genuinely feeling sorry for them, even though Eleanor had pushed her husband into risky decisions without any safety net. She's hinting that we should help out, Liam continued. Like, give them money to cover at least part of it, but I don't want to ask you. It's your family inheritance. I sighed deeply. Sure, I felt bad for them, but after everything Eleanor had done to me, if I handed over a big sum now, I'd only feel used. Liam, I'm willing to consider an interest-free loan or something if they sign a contract and agree to repay it. But just giving them the money. I'm sorry. No. I get it. I don't want to just hand it over either, but they're still my parents. I can't just say, figure it out on your own. I understand, I said, but I doubt your mom would agree to any formal agreement. She thinks just because I'm in the family, I owe her. We spent a long time discussing options. Liam could take out a loan himself, but then everything, our lives, our home plans, would be at risk. So, we decided he'd talk to his dad, see if he was at least reasonable. The talk happened. And his dad agreed. If we were going to help, he was ready to put their country house up as collateral. But when Eleanor found out, she exploded. You're putting our dacha up as collateral. To her. That greedy, selfish woman who's just looking out for herself. Liam tried to calm her. Mom, it's the only realistic way to make sure the loan gets paid back. Chloe's not refusing to help. She just wants a guarantee. That's normal. Guarantees. We're a family. How many times do I have to say it? Families help each other without strings. Of course, nothing good came out of that. Eleanor threw a fit, said she'd rather die than take money from me with conditions. But Liam's dad, being more level-headed, understood the situation. Eventually, they must have decided to manage on their own. Liam and I breathed a sigh of relief. We felt bad, sure, but we also couldn't keep being the family's ATM. And then came the twist we never saw coming. Liam's dad called in the middle of the night. Eleanor had been rushed to the hospital. Severe hypertension. Dangerously high blood pressure. We rushed there the next morning. She was admitted immediately, and the doctor said she needed urgent treatment for cardiovascular issues. When we arrived, she looked pale, tears in her eyes. Liam was visibly worried, and I was scared, too. For all our issues, I never wished her harm. How are you, Mom? Liam asked gently, sitting by her side. Not good, son, she whispered, her voice reedy. The doctors say I need surgery on my arteries. It's expensive. I don't know where we'll get the money. I really did feel sorry for her. But I also knew this was the classic family drama moment. The enemy is now vulnerable, and it's up to you to decide whether to help. I looked at Liam. He gave me a silent, pleading look. What do we do? We'll figure something out, he said softly. Don't worry. What did the doctors say? They want to do a bypass surgery. It'll cost nearly $30,000, plus rehab. She started crying again. We just don't have it. Your father isn't earning anything. $30,000 was no small sum, but not impossible. If I really wanted, I could dip into my savings. And now came the moment of truth. Was I ready to help the woman who, just weeks ago, had called me greedy, meddled in our lives, and criticized everything I did? Could I rise above all that for the sake of her health and her life? I looked at Liam. Liam will help, right? She asked again, her eyes fixed on him. Of course, he said quickly, clearly relieved I wasn't saying no. Mom, don't cry. We'll cover the surgery on whatever terms Chloe decides. My heart ached. But I knew this time I wasn't going to ask for any repayment. That would just feel cruel. She was sick. I wasn't going to make her sign anything. There are no terms, I said quietly, my voice surprisingly steady. We'll help. Health isn't something you turn into debt. Eleanor looked at me through her tears, her eyes wide with shock and something else. Gratitude? Chloe, I don't know what to say. I've been so awful to you, and now you want to help. Yes, I do, I said. Because you're Liam's mom. You're Leo's grandmother. No matter how many arguments we've had, your life still matters to me. She broke down in tears, and it felt like everything was in them. Pain, resentment, and regret. Liam held her hand. I stood nearby, swallowing the lump in my throat. The doctors asked us to step out, saying she needed rest, and we promised we'd sort out the payment as soon as possible. On the way out of the hospital, Liam said, I'm sorry this keeps happening, like we're dipping into your inheritance again. It's not inheritance, it's my savings. But that doesn't matter. I'll transfer the money. Let her get the treatment she needs. Thank you, Chloe. I love you. He took my hand, and I felt this deep sense of relief. No matter everything that had happened, we weren't going to let her die just because she didn't have the money. Maybe, just maybe, this would finally soften her heart toward me. We paid for the surgery, and a week later, it was successfully done. Eleanor was moved to a regular room. The doctor said she'd need rehabilitation at a health resort next. She looked better, even though still weak. When Leo, and I came to visit her, she smiled, a genuine, soft smile. Hi, my darlings. Sorry, Leo. Grandma couldn't see you sooner. I'll get better soon, and then you'll come visit me. Okay. Leo beamed, not really grasping how serious everything had been. I noticed something had subtly shifted in Eleanor. She was warmer toward me. I guess a health scare has a way of changing your perspective. She quietly called me over to her bed, asking Liam to keep Leo busy. Chloe, she began, her voice raspy, I need to say something. I'm really grateful for your help. And I want to apologize. My whole life, I believed that if someone in the family had money, they should share it and follow the family's rules. But you've always had your own mind. And I fought that. I understand, I said, sitting down. You did what you thought was best for your son. But I was wrong. I'm sorry for bringing a notary to your door during your first week of marriage, for pushing that prenup, for pressuring you to invest in our business, she said, her voice low with shame, and for trying to manipulate things with Leo. What matters is that it's all behind us now. Focus on getting better. When you're out of here, let's try to build a more peaceful relationship. She nodded, and tears welled up again. You're a good person, Chloe. And I only realize it now. I was scared of you. I don't even know why. I thought you were after Liam for his money, that you'd leave him and take half the apartment. But it was never like that. No, it wasn't, I affirmed. I just wanted us to live our own life, not by someone else's rules. We talked for a little while longer, and for the very first time, I felt like we were equals. Maybe she really had come to understand how wrong she'd been. As we left, Liam hugged me and said, "Looks like things are finally changing." Who would have thought it would take a health scare to get here? Life has a weird way of teaching us things, I said. The next couple of months, Eleanor went through rehab. We paid for her stay at the sanatorium. I'd stopped counting the cost. After years of fighting, I just wanted some peace. Even Liam's father seemed a bit warmer toward me now. He probably saw that I didn't abandon his wife when things got tough. In the evenings, he'd call Liam to give updates and thank us for everything. When Eleanor came home, we threw a small celebration, set the table, invited my parents and Aunt Sarah, who was also happy to see Eleanor recovered. We gave her small gifts. And for the first time in years, she raised a toast and said, "Chloe, I want everyone here to know you're not just my daughter-in-law. You're truly part of this family. You didn't just help me get better. You helped me face my fears. Thank you for teaching me to respect someone else's boundaries." I sat there smiling, hearing the sincerity in her voice. I kept thinking, did we really just reach a truce? Maybe after all those years of battle, we were finally heading toward peace. Of course, life's never completely perfect. There are always little things that pop up. Eleanor still offered parenting advice now and then, sometimes a little too eagerly, but it wasn't aggressive or critical anymore. It came from a genuine desire to help. She stopped hinting that I owed them anything financially and began to respect that I had my own path. More than that, she started appreciating my professional skills. "Chloe, you know about finance. Can you help your father and me figure out how to refinance our loan?" she asked one day, calmly, without that usual controlling tone. I gave her a few suggestions and called a couple of economist friends. They were thankful, and things began to settle down. Meanwhile, my cousin Rebecca had finished designing the plans for our future house. We started looking for a construction crew. Eleanor now asked with genuine curiosity, "What are you two planning? What kind of facade will it have? Are you putting in a fireplace? I can already picture you sipping tea by it in the winter." She spoke with real enthusiasm. "If you need help choosing materials, I know a good designer." We worked together during one of our old renovation projects. And I realized I'd actually welcome her suggestions, as long as they came kindly and not with the intention of taking control. Maybe relationships could change if people just showed a bit more humanity. Liam visited the land almost every week, keeping track of everything. On weekends, Leo and I would join him. We'd set up a small wooden cabin with a few beds, a table, and chairs, enough to stay for a couple of nights. Leo loved it. For him, it already felt like a real countryside home. Still temporary, but definitely ours. One day, as I was chopping firewood near the cabin, needed to heat the little stove, Liam walked up to me and said, "You know, I don't say this enough, but I'm so proud of who you are. You stand your ground. You don't let anyone push you around, but you're still kind, even to people who've hurt you." "Thank you," I smiled, brushing my hair back from my face. "And you've done a lot, too. You could have sided with your mom, pressured me into giving up my savings for the family business, but you always stood with me." "Because I love you," Liam said simply. We hugged under the wide blue sky, feeling like all of it, carving out our independence, defending our boundaries, even clashing with relatives, was worth it for moments like this. In the end, we found our way to understanding, even if it wasn't instant. And now I often think back to that day when I was younger and far more naive, standing at the threshold of my new married life, hearing the doorbell ring and finding my mother-in-law on the doorstep with a notary. It's been 4 years since then, but it feels like a lifetime. I still tell myself, thank God I kept quiet back then, because if I had told her about the 3 apartments from the start, she would have done everything in her power to take control of my inheritance and my freedom. Who knows, maybe Liam and I would have clashed even harder and wouldn't have survived that kind of pressure so early in our marriage. On the other hand, I've come to realize, sooner or later, the truth does come out. What really matters is having the person you love stand by your side when it does. All of my mother-in-law's attempts to reform me were doomed from the start. In the end, it was her health scare that opened her eyes. She saw who was really there for her, who was willing to help. And maybe that's what finally changed her attitude toward me. Some might say the whole thing sounds like a fairy tale ending. But the truth is, life is messier than any novel. There are still new chapters ahead. Finishing the house, raising Leo, maybe even having a second child. Eleanor, though she's calmed down a lot, is still not an easy person. Every now and then, she'll have a flare of jealousy or try to control something. But now I know how to handle it. I calmly say, this is our family. We're happy to hear your advice, but the decision is ours. The most surprising part is that after her surgery, she started talking to me like a friend. Maybe she finally realized life is too short to waste on fights and power games. One day, she even told me, "You know, Chloe, when I was young, I had a terrible relationship with my own mother-in-law. She always criticized me for not earning enough, for being bad at housekeeping, and I guess I absorbed that pattern. I thought it was normal to tell the younger generation what to do. It happens a lot," I sighed. People tend to repeat what they grew up with, even when it hurt them. We were sitting in the kitchen, having tea. Liam and Leo were in the other room, building something out of blocks. And for the first time, I didn't see Eleanor as some all-powerful critic. I saw a woman who had faced her own fears and insecurities. "It's a shame it took me this long to realize," she said, looking out the window. "But thank you for giving me the chance to make things right." My heart softened, and I realized I was genuinely glad. Somehow, we had gone from being adversaries, or at least rivals, to being people who could talk, listen, and support each other when it mattered. As of now, life is calm. We're still living in my grandmother's apartment, which has truly become our home. Meanwhile, we've started building on our plot of land. Leo goes to kindergarten. This fall, he'll start a prep program for school. Eleanor picks him up sometimes when we can't, and they've found their own rhythm. Her special methods now just mean reading fairy tales together in the evenings. No more notaries showing up at our door. No one's trying to tell me how to spend my money. And on my end, I help my in-laws when I can, like the time we chipped in together to send them on a health retreat. I do it now not out of guilt or fear, but simply because I want to. Sometimes when I share old family stories, my friends ask, "Wait, your mother-in-law? The same one who used to be awful?" I smile and say life changed, and we changed with it. Most importantly, I learned to set boundaries and not let anyone cross them. That, I think, is the real outcome of this long story. My marriage to Liam was tested by fire, from my inheritance to his mother's influence, and the way we made choices together. But we came through stronger, more united than ever. We share the same goal now, to live with love, raise our children, and build a home. My financial independence is still intact. I still rent out the last apartment, which gives me a safety net. Since Eleanor recovered, she's let go of a lot of her illusions. She stopped believing money solves everything. She's come to see that what matters more is an honest relationship with her son and with me. That's the foundation we're trying to build on. Yes, we still see life differently, but the aggression and need to dominate are gone. Sometimes I think back to those early days after the wedding, the very beginning, when Eleanor showed up with a notary and demanded a prenup. I think how differently things could have turned out if I'd folded then, or if I'd fought back too hard. Thankfully, I had the sense to stay quiet at the right moment, to protect what was mine, and to find a balance between independence and keeping peace in the family. I suppose you could call this a happy ending. No fairy dust, just a good, real-life kind of ending, the kind that feels earned. Looking ahead, we're planning to lay the foundation for our house next year. If we manage the budget wisely, maybe in a couple of years, we'll have the walls and roof up. Or it might take longer, and that's okay. The main thing is we're doing it together, with no pressure from anyone. Sometimes I catch myself smiling, imagining us in our future home, sitting by the fireplace. Eleanor's there, too, peacefully chatting with me about garden flowers. Maybe she'll bake pies and tell Liam how sweet Leo was as a kid, while Leo rides his bike through the yard. No more notaries, no more ultimatums, just a family. Of course, life doesn't guarantee smooth sailing. New challenges will come. But I've learned the most important lessons. Protect your boundaries. Learn to say no and still stay kind. And if someone asks me, what's your biggest secret? I'd probably say, know when to keep quiet about your money and know when to give it freely, especially if it can save someone. That's the tricky art of family, where everyone deserves their own space, but no one forgets what it means to show up for each other. So yes, our story has been a journey. It started with that fateful knock at the door in the first week of our marriage. And now we have reconciled relatives, a son, and plans for the future. A lot could have gone wrong, but it didn't. And I can say with full confidence, when I got married, I didn't mention the 3 apartments I inherited from my grandmother. And thank God I kept quiet, because just a week later, my mother-in-law showed up with a notary. That chapter is over now. Ahead of us lies a bright, wide-open future. One where we're no longer opponents, but a family.